out of Washington State, young gent. Venables elects to go the way of the air raid, right? Kind of following in the Stoops footsteps. I would say the underlying thing to this whole deal, DMAC, is a guy who I've had a chance to evaluate a ton now and look at, and that's John Mateer, who is the Washington State quarterback. And I'm sure Sooner Nation wants to have that position solidified. You don't know what Hawkins is going to be, but if OU could bring in a Mateer and give Hawkins one more year of seasoning, guys, but Mateer is the real deal. Touch. He has about as much touch on his passes as a Baker Mayfield. He's definitely not velocity gunslinger in the same way, but when it comes to deep touch, when it comes to some of the intermediate throws and throwing guys open in the middle of the field, right, squeeze it in between the backer and the safety, Mateer can do those things and familiar with the system. But DMAC, talk a little bit about OU and Venables. We heard some of the names, so I think we can say them at this point. Mullen was a name that was out there. Buster Faulkner was a name that was out there. We hinted at it on the show. You had Craddock out of Tulane, and then you had the other guys, the Marions, and some of they seem to not really be true candidates in this journey. It seems like Venables did want to go the way of a guy who's been solidified at least somewhat of a Power Five program, right? You wouldn't call the Pac. It's really more Power Four now, but Washington State's not really where they need to be. But talk a little bit about Arbuckle and OU going the air raid direction away from not that they don't run the ball, but just kind of away from the power spread kind of RPO stuff that OU has been doing, right?
Well, obviously, like I was saying pre-show, he was third level for me. And those of you guys who listen to our podcast know had nothing to do with his scheming ability. When you do a deep dive into what he has done in his short career, he has been responsible for creating NFL caliber quarterbacks. Most recently, Cam Ward, who's going to be going off into the NFL after his year with him, and then going on to Miami, and a couple other guys at Western Kentucky as well. But my big issue was going into uncharted territory, going into the SEC, going into a place where we found out very quickly we were ill-equipped to be successful year one. And then you look at a mirror image of Texas, where Sark was right there up close and personal with Saban for a couple of years as his OC. He knew exactly what was needed to come into the SEC and be successful. And so my biggest gripe, and I'm saying this because I want to provide context into why I was so adamant around bringing somebody who had SEC brass onto the fold, because there's no one at OU's team. There's no one in the last decade who could tell you what it takes to be successful in the SEC. Well, let's put that to bed. We've got Arbuckle. In terms of his ability, his talent, he's really good. Young guy, dynamic. Um, Someone, if you would know this, if you guys were on Rivals, you guys know. Someone asked me an hour after he was hired, what are some things to look forward to? And a lot of people have been posting their interpretations. But I think the three things we can really immediately um, expect and feel good about with Arbuckle coming in is, number one, he's going to punish you in a light box. Teams want to play at 3-3-5,
Mm.
or they want to have overhangs that can really split the difference, and be those nickel kind of cheetah guys who can say, hey, I can jump in on the run, or be a good enough athlete to be, to cover the hole or things like that nature in the past. Arbuckle's going to punish you with the quarterback run game. And the beauty and difference between his QB run versus, say, what we saw with Joe John, or some of the stuff we do with Seth, is it's very dynamic. There are going to be a lot of variations to what they're going to be doing, whether it's a lead, whether it's a power, whether it's a counter. There's a lot of variation to it. And what it does, and what he does, is he finds out where the nose is. Looking, depending on if your nose, if the center